So again, the side opposite the 30-degree angle is 1/2 the hypotenuse. Since I chose the hypotenuse to be 2, then the side opposite the 30 is 1. The side opposite the 60-degree angle is equal to 1/2 the hypotenuse times the square root of 3. So it would just be equal to the square root of 3. And again, you could use the Pythagorean theorem. If you know the two sides, the hypotenuse and the side opposite the 30, you could use the Pythagorean theorem to find the side opposite the 60. So now remember, we have the sine is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, which is 1/2. The cosine is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, the square root of 3 over 2. The tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent, 1 over the square root of 3, but you need to rationalize. So you're getting the square root of 3 over 3. The cosecant is reciprocal of sine, so the reciprocal of 1/2 is 2. The secant is reciprocal of cosine, so it's 2 over the square root of 3, but then we rationalize and get 2 square root of 3 over 3. And the cotangent is reciprocal of tangent, which is the square root of 3 over 1, or just the square root of 3. That's called cofunctions. And it's shortened down from complementary functions. It's just shortened down to cofunctions. It means that we have two trig functions that if the angles add up to 90 degrees, they're cofunctions of each other. And so let me show you how that works with 30 and 60, since 30 and 60 add up to 90. So we have the sine of 60 degrees. So opposite 60 is the square root of 3. The hypotenuse is 2. So we're getting the square root of 3 over 2. You'll notice that the cosine of 30 and the sine of 60 are cofunctions of each other. The angles add up to 90 degrees. So the cosine of 30 equals the sine of 60. The sine of 30, which is 1/2, is the same as the cosine of 60, because the cosine of 60 is adjacent. Adjacent to 60 is 1, over the hypotenuse is 2, so we're getting 1/2. So the sine of 30 and the cosine of 60 are equal. The tangent is equal to opposite over adjacent. So the tangent of 60, the opposite is the square root of 3 over 1. So we're getting the square root of 3, which is equal to the cotangent of 30. So the tangent of 60, the cotangent of 30 are cofunctions. Same thing of the tangent of 30 and the cotangent of 60, we're getting the square root of 3 over 3. They're cofunctions of each other. And then secant and cosecant are reciprocals. So the cosecant of 30 is 20. The secant of 60 is 20. The cosecant of 30 is 2. The secant of 60 is 2. Secant of 30 is 2 square root of 3 over 2. So the cosecant of 60 is 2 square root of 3 over 3. So the tangent's equal to 1, and the reciprocal cotangent is equal to 1. The cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite, and rationalizing, getting rid of the radical in the denominator, we have 2 square root of 2 over 2, or just the square root of 2. And again, the cosecant of 45 and the secant of 45 are cofunctions. They're equal to each other, so we get the square root of 2 for the secant of 45 as well. The sine of 60, opposite 60 is the square root of 3, over the hypotenuse is 2, so you have the square root of 3 over 2, times the cosine of 30 is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is also square root of 3 over 2, plus The cosine of 60 is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 1/2. The sine of 30 is opposite over hypotenuse, which is also 1/2. Square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. And 2 times 2 is 4. 1/2 times 1/2 is 1/4. And the sum is equal to 1. So I have the cosine of 60 is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse, which is 1/2. The cosine of 30 is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is the square root of 3 over 2. The sine of 60 is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, or the square root of 3 over 2. The sine of 30 is opposite over hypotenuse, or 1/2. So the square root of 3 over 4 plus the square root of 3 over 4 is 2 square root of 3 over 4, or simply the square root of 3 over 2. Okay, first we have the cotangent of 45, which is adjacent over opposite. So the adjacent of 45 over the opposite of 45, square root of 2 over the square root of 2 is 1. The cosecant of 30 is reciprocal of the sine of 30. If you remember, the sine of 30 is 1/2, or you look at the diagram, opposite over hypotenuse. The cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite, which is 2 over 1, or 2, so the sum is 3. Okay, the cosine of 45 is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is the square root of 2 over 2. The cosine of 30 is adjacent over hypotenuse, which is the square root of 3 over 2. The sine of 45 is opposite over hypotenuse, or the square root of 2 over 2. And the sine of 30 is opposite over hypotenuse, which is 1 over 2, or 1/2. Now, simplifying. We can multiply the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 to get the square root of 6 over 4, minus the square root of 2 over 4. This is not equal to the square root of 4 over 2. You can multiply numbers that are underneath the radical, but you can only add and subtract when you have like numbers underneath the radical. So we end up with the square root of 6 minus the square root of 2 over 4.